us what is going on with the oceans, and tell us what kind of impact, how they can regenerate themselves, and what's involved in allowing that to happen.
Right, okay. For the longest time, I think we all had the out of sight, out of mind. It's huge. We can, you know, we can take as much out of it that we want, and we can pump as much pollution, sewage, whatever, into it, and it won't matter. It'll be a toilet that self-flushes, no problem. And that is not so. Some scientists believe we literally have 40 to 50 years, 60 years. If you look at the trends, scientific data, trends are not reliable, but nevertheless, to give you an idea, if you look at a trend and we didn't change our ways within 40, 50, 60 years, you could literally, commercially, fish out the world's oceans. No more commercially caught fish. You'd be having jellyfish soup, a lot of it. And here's why. There are about 2.5 times the amount of boats out on the water that could sustainably catch, fish. A lot of them are these huge trawlers. So you have too many boats, you are using the wrong kind of equipment, and you are wiping out the top of the food chain. And I'll tell you how and why in a second. At the same time, and the reason why we talk about oil and fossil fuel is, at the same time, the oceans are starting to face something called acidification, where the oceans are absorbing so much, and this isn't cyclical, this is scientifically proven, man-made burning of fossil fuels since the Industrial Revolution, is absorbing so much of that carbon dioxide that the pH balance of the oceans is changing just a little bit, but enough so that the calcium carbonate cannot bind together. You've seen pictures of the coral reefs starting to get kind of chalky. So coral reefs are going to start to disintegrate, and the little teeny pteropods and sea snails that use calcium to make their shells can't make their shells anymore. So you're attacking the bottom of the food chain, at the same time you're overfishing the top of the food chain, and you literally could squeeze the vitality out of the oceans. So, too many boats. You're also using fishing practices that do not make any sense. You bottom trawl, which are these huge, huge bottom nets that get dragged along. They're after the bottom of the fish. They get dragged along the bottom of the ocean. And they used to have to lift the nets, but now when they bumped against corals or rocks, they would tear their nets. They have to lift them. Not anymore. They're so sophisticated. They have these rollers that can just roll right over the top of these rocks and nooks and crannies and turn it into a gravel pit, literally. There are pictures of corals and rocks. Here comes the trawler, gravel. The problem with that is you're killing your nurseries. You should object to them killing the coral reefs, but forget about that. Just be selfish. You want the fish that, the little fish that grow up, the big fish that we like to eat. You don't want to destroy their nurseries. We bottom trawl the world the size of the United States every year. Gets swept, turning it into gravel pits. So you're attacking the nurseries. You're also being incredibly wasteful. There's something called bycatch, where you're after fish A, and your big nets pull up everything indiscriminately. And you go through and go, nope, 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 nope. 1/3 of the world's catch. It's something like 10 to 30%, sometimes 40%. So it's safe just depending on where you are. 30% of the world's catch is thrown overboard, dead or dying. We have film of these fishing trawlers with these mock crates of fish. It's fish like this, being dumped overboard because the fish that would get the more money are this big. And so they don't want to show up on the dock, with fish, so they dump it overboard. 1/3 of the world's catch being wasted. Nurseries being wiped out. When I grew up in the 50s, if you take that as the kind of common denominator, 90% of the big fish that were around in the 50s, gone. not the species, but 90% of the tuna, gone. 90% of the swordfish, gone. The sharks, the king mackerel, the marlin, gone. 90% since the 50s. Since 1988, they did a study that for the first time in the history of man, fish catch, worldwide fish catch started to decline. It went up and up and up. Boats became more sophisticated. You now have radar that can point to that fish right there. They have spotter planes. They have satellites. More and more sophistication, more and more boats going out to catch declining. So literally everything is pointing in that direction, that if we continue the way we practice our harvesting of these fish, you could commercially fish out our oceans. Good news, fish populations, most of them, rebound very quickly. In the North Atlantic during World War II, the stock just rebounded through the roof because people were afraid to fish because of U-boats. There's an amazing piece on CNN 3 months ago where the little local fishermen in their wooden 12-foot skiffs with nets, the Kenyans, were jumping with joy because fish were like almost jumping in their boats. There were so many fish around for the first time in decades because the Somalian pirates had scared the hell out of any of the big trawlers. They were not trawling that area for fear of being hijacked. So if you stop fishing an area or stop using the wrong kind of equipment that is indiscriminate and wasteful, you can allow fisheries to rebound. It is possible. One of the things that Oceania is doing is working at the World Trade Organization because this particular trade round, the Doha round, for the first time in history, is talking about reducing subsidies in part of their trade agreement, reducing subsidies for fisheries, for fishing boats. It's an $80 billion a year industry worldwide, land and catch. 20 billion of that goes for all the wrong things. Fish catch going down, and 20 billion goes to make the boat bigger, faster, bigger nets, to pay for the fuel, all those things that are actually making the problem worse. And everybody recognizes this now. All the countries recognize it. They're still fighting over it. Your boats, not mine, that are the problem. But people realize that this is an opportunity to do something about it. And it looks like this trade round may actually move next year. So it could be a very exciting time. So anyway, the other good news is we have this 200-mile EZ, is that what it's called? That belongs, every country has 200 miles out of the ocean that belongs to them. That's a huge amount of fisheries, because most of the fisheries, the healthy nurseries, take place within that first 3, 4, 5, 10 miles. Like for us, we have the continental shelf. It's, the cold current of water coming up brings the rich nutrients, and you have the little fish loving the little nutrients. And so the fisheries are the richest, the nurseries are the richest, closest to the land. So if you do work individually with countries and show them and teach them and educate them, you can make a difference. You don't necessarily have to go to the UN and create some huge international body that won't work. So that's what Oceania does. It goes around educating, trying to change policy, and make a difference. We put more people on boats to observe what's going on with bycatch. Anyway, we do a lot of things that I can tell you about later. But that's basically the problem that's happening. At the same time, you have ocean acidification taking place at the bottom of the food chain. So you really could squeeze the vitality out of our oceans.
Besides oil pollution,
did that make kind of sense? Did that make a little sense?
It made total sense. I think you understood. But I actually think that you may have answered my next question, so I'm going to go on to another one, which I know will be particularly intriguing for our audience, and that is that we're librarians, we have access to information, and we have opportunities that are really unparalleled to reach out to people. I mean, there are 16,000 public libraries in the nation alone. There are 120-some thousand school libraries. libraries, we have many, many ways that we can educate younger people, and we can reach out to the total population about this issue. So what I was wondering is, can you talk with us about some ways that you think we can make a difference in this really, in bringing awareness to this issue?
Well, this is embarrassing because, you know, you just hit my, I'm going to go to sleep because I'm around librarians. I had to ask you, I don't know what you all do anymore. I found out. But, you know, it was easy when you walk in from school and you go check out a book. That you're way more than that now. So for me to say what it is you can do, I don't know, but I do know that well, seriously, I don't know. I have to ask you, do you point people in direction? If you heard this, read the book, or just found out about some other book and read about it, if you became concerned about what's happening with the oceans, do you have a way of, hey kids, hey people, you should check this out?
Yes. Yes.
Well, that's what you can do, and it doesn't have to be our book, but you should pass on this information that this is not, first off, it's not it's a huge environmental problem that is fixable in our generation. You literally, some of you, will be able to tell your kids, you know, how do you want to answer that question? Did you know about this dad or granddad or whatever, grandma? What did you do about it? This is one of those problems that we literally will know in some of our lifetimes whether or not we succeeded. And it is doable. So if this is something that excites your imagination, then I wouldn't waste any time in getting that information out to people. Because that's all we can really do. We can say, this is what's going on. Is this the kind of world you want? If not, and the whole chunk of the book is about what you can do, what you can do by supporting organizations, what you can do on your own as an individual. So it's not this doom and gloom. It is, this is real, this is happening, and this is what can be done about it, needs to be done about it, and here's what you can do about it. So hopefully it addresses all of those issues, and I think we've done a pretty good job doing that. It also has these great illustrations and some graphs and some sidebars, so that our hope is that people learn, and I can put people to sleep in 2 minutes talking about fish. So to have a whole book, you know, talking about fish, we have to find ways not to put people to sleep. People learn in different ways. So they're amazing Don Foley illustrations that are just great to illustrate the problem that we're talking about. Are there sidebars with people who are either famous or really knowledgeable on a subject that is a quick hit, you know, a 200-word blast that, you know, I can even wade through kind of thing, so that people can absorb the book in all different ways. So I don't know how to answer your question other than I would be forever grateful on many levels. Selfish, you know, for the book, and for support of Rodale that does this kind of work, and Mike Dorso, who did an amazing job putting a lot of this together, but also for the issue of oceans. I would be incredibly grateful if you found new ways to get people to come to the table. So thank you. Sorry, I didn't answer your question.
Well, you did answer it, and we do have many ways to reach out to people, because again, we are school librarians, we're public librarians, and we're academic librarians. And the important thing is to know about the resource that you're providing with your book. And so that is one way that we can certainly reach out, and we can build that information into the school curriculum.
Great. Can I jump in 1 second?
Sure.
And thank you.
This is your interview.
Thank you. So many times you hear environment versus economy, especially nowadays. It is such a crock. If you would do the right thing for the ocean, you would create more jobs, you would create better national security, you would also make sure that your God-given, you know, resource was around for your grandchildren's grandchildren. You know, there's not one argument that comes your way when it's talking about doing the right thing for the oceans that is right. You know, There may be some shifting in jobs descriptions, but that's gone on throughout history. So, you know, be careful and arm yourself with information when people say, yeah, that it would cost jobs or it would cost too much money. No, you create way more jobs with clean energy than you do continuing oil and coal. And trust me, you have to factor in all the health costs and all of the other, and the subsidies that go to these companies. You know. So, you know, educate yourself. A trawler hires, 30 people from random countries all over the world. A lot of them convicts. I know that's weird. Don't quote me on that one. Let's just pretend I didn't even say that. There was one ship that was busted. It was full of like people who were in jail sentences all over. Nothing. There are a lot of really nice trawlers out there. But they hired like 30 people and just decimated an entire fishery. Whereas one little 12-foot wooden skiff in Santiago, Chile employs 30 people. So, you know, if you want to talk about job creation, talk about being responsible. So I just want to throw that in.